If I can bring you back to woke again. Well,
Okay, let's go.
I'm interested if there's any aspect of woke that you like, because to me it's a spectrum between some ideas which are to do with kindness, which is fundamentally a Christian virtue, and the other percent, which is going a little bit bananas. We had a case the other day where a company called, not a company, an institution called Oxfam, they issued a pamphlet telling the people who work for them, advising them how they should speak. And they said things like, if you support someone, you should not say to them that you stand with them because it might upset people who can't stand. Now, that seems to me ridiculous. So there's one end of woke that I think is pretty ridiculous, but there's another end which ideally is about trying to help and kind and care.
I am 100% behind kindness.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
I'm a kind person. I help people. I do whatever I can. My whole family is that way.
Yeah.
I've tried to bring them up that way. Kindness is extremely important. I just joined on as a spokesman for a PAC, which is raising money for issues. It's called Fairness First. I'm all about fairness, okay?
Yeah.
And that because I have been an advocate for fairness in women's sports. I'm not on the woke side of saying, oh, trans women should be able to compete in sports. No, it's not fair, okay? It's just not fair.
And it's not...
So I've been out trying to, for the last 2 years, trying to protect women's sports.
Yes.
I love women, okay? And it's just not fair.
Because the argument is that if you, at puberty, if you have a man's body, it's essentially bigger and stronger than a woman's body would be. If you then go to
the rules are all over the place, okay, when it comes to trans women in sports. And, you know, I go all the way back, and you go way back there, too. You remember back in the 70s, a little bit into the 80s, the East German women at the Olympics. Yeah, remember that? And the Soviet, it was Soviet Union back then, the Soviet women, you looked at them and you went, oh my God, you know, look at those girls. I mean, and so the Olympic Committee's been dealing with it for a long time to keep it fair. And that was mostly drug related, okay? It was because the testing procedures weren't as accurate back then as they are today. Today they're so accurate and they're so well tested. They do a pretty good job of testing for that. Yeah, they do a good job for that. But when it comes to sports, it's just not fair. And honestly, I started with the Leah Thomas deal, and you remember that at Penn. It just wasn't fair. And Leah Thomas was 6'4", big hands. Transitioned just over the last couple of years. And hormone levels were lower, but went through male puberty. 6'4", big hands, kicking butt in the NCAA, okay?
Yes.
And it's just wrong. It's not fair. It's not fair because they went through puberty. FINA is the world organization for controls the rules in swimming, changed the rules, said, and I think rightly so, that you would have to have transitioned before the age of 12. Why? Because you have to transition before you go through puberty. And I agree with that decision, and we'll see how that works out. Then one of your people, Sebastian Coe, okay, one of your great runners.
Oh, yeah.
He's the head of World Athletics. And he, about a couple of months back, he said, I picked fairness over equality. And basically came and banned trans women from international sports.
Right.
And again, I think that's the right decision. We just have to protect women's sports, you know? Now in the United States, we have a law called Title IX. Title IX was passed back in the 80s, early 80s. And it was a fairness, mostly in the NCAA, but fairness in women's sports, okay? If the boys get, let's say the men's soccer team gets 10 scholarships, well, then the women have to get 10 scholarships too, okay? Well, with that in place over the last 30 years, 40 years, I mean, it has risen women's sports tremendously.
Yeah.
It's given out so many scholarships to women, and it's been such a great program, okay?
Great program.
Well, even the NCAA is doing things about trans athletes. But now, Joe Biden, who's been on the wrong side of every issue in history, says we have to open up Title IX to make it gender identity, not women.
Really?
Which would kill women's sports, backed by $10 million by George Soros, okay? Backed by George Soros. So now Joe Biden is literally trying to ruin women's sports by letting anybody who just identifies as a woman go in and compete. It would destroy women's sports. It would discourage women. It is ridiculous. So with Fairness First, that's what we're doing. We're raising money to go out and fight this issue because it's not going away. It's not going away.
But a lot of international bodies governing sports have made decisions in accordance with what you're saying recently.
Some of the big ones have, not every one. We have a long way to go because in the case of fairness, you have to deal with every different organization, and they have to come up with their own set of rules, you know? And so that's what we do at Fairness First. We're doing that